in the heart of the ancient valley, a place the sun had long forgotten. Where shadows clung to the old stones like a second skin, two warriors stood poised for a final, terrible confrontation. Hey, they were the last echoes of a war that had outlived its reason, the last inheritors of a blood feud that had consumed generations. One bore the unmistakable mark of the lion. A mane of spun gold flowed around a face carved from granite, leoned, and his eyes, they didn't just see, they burned. They held the intensity of molten fire, a king's gaze that had commanded legions and judged nations. His name was Oryx, the undisputed king of Pride's Gate, a fortress city built on the bones of his ancestors' enemies. His every breath was a testament to his lineage, his every muscle a coil of raw, regal power. He was the sun made manifest, a golden god of the battlefield. Facing him, a stark and chilling contrast, was the tiger. He was a creature of the night, sleek, silent, his movements a fluid dance of lethality. His stripes were not mere patterns, they were etched into his form like the scars from 1,000 forgotten wars, each one a story of survival, of a kill, of a near miss. He was Rihand, the ghost of the Eastern Claw, a name whispered in fear across the moonlit jungles. Where Oryx was a storm, Rihand was the silence that precedes Ida Phantom, a promise of death delivered on padded feet. Their tribes, the lions of the west and the tigers of the east, had been locked in a bitter struggle for as long as the valley's ancient trees could remember. It was a war for territory, for honor, for a crown forged in the heart of a fallen star. They fought over resources that had long since dwindled and for insults that had faded into myth. The conflict had become a self-perpetuating machine of grief and vengeance, relentlessly grinding down their numbers until only these two, the apex of their respective clans, remained. The weight of their entire history, all the victories and all the losses, now rested upon their shoulders. This was not just a duel. It was the final, shuddering gasp of an entire epoch. The air, thick with unspoken history and the scent of damp earth, grew heavy, seeming to tremble in anticipation. It was a silence so profound it felt louder than any war cry. Then, with a sudden, explosive consensus, they charged. It wasn't a roar that broke the quiet, but the violent displacement of air as two forces of nature collided. The sound that followed was not of flesh and blood, but of something far more fundamental. Claws against steel, roar against roar. The ground beneath them groaned, protesting the sheer force of their impact. Its dust, disturbed from its centuries of rest, billowed into the air, instantly stained crimson as the first blood was drawn. It swirled around them, a macabre curtain for their deadly performance. Every strike was a thunderclap, shaking the very foundations of the valley. Every parry was a spark of lightning in the gloom. Rex, the lion, fought with the unyielding force of a mountain. Its movements were broad, powerful, each swing meant to shatter bone and break spirits. Rihan, the tiger, was his opposite, a whirlwind of precise, deadly strikes. He weaved and dodged, his blades flashing like a surgeon's scalpels, seeking the slightest gap in the lion's defense. Oryx, seeing an opening, drove his armored fist forward with the force of a battering ram. The impact was sickeningly solid, a crunch of bone as his gauntlet connected with Rihan's jaw. The tiger staggered, a spray of red mist erupting from his lips, his vision swimming. But even in his daze, his instincts were absolute. As Oryx pressed his advantage, Rihan's arm whipped out in a blur. His claws, sharpened to a monomolecular edge, carved a deep, brutal arc across the lion's chest. Oryx roared, a sound of pure agony, as his golden armor split and the flesh beneath was laid bare. They broke apart, stumbling back, the momentum of their battle finally ceasing. Both were panting, their chests heaving, their bodies screaming in protest. Blood dripped from Oryx's chest, a stark river of red against his golden fur. Rihan spat a broken tooth, the coppery taste of his own blood filling his mouth. They were wounded, grievously so, but their eyes remained locked, an unbreakable bond of hatred, and, perhaps, something else. Something that looked painfully like respect. Neither was willing to be the first to fall. Neither was willing to kneel. They were the last, and to yield was to erase their people from history forever. And then it happened. The sky, which had been a passive observer, chose its moment to intervene. A jagged spear of pure white light tore through the gloom, striking the ground precisely between them. The crack of thunder was instantaneous and deafening, a cosmic hammer blow that seemed to split the world in two. The flash was blinding, erasing the valley, the warriors, everything in a searing, absolute whiteness. A shockwave ripped outwards, throwing both men from their feet like discarded toys. Smoke, thick and acrid, filled the air, smelling of ozone and burnt earth. For a long moment, there was only silence, broken by the crackle of residual energy and the soft patter of dislodged pebbles. When the smoke finally began to clear, a lone figure was revealed. It was the tiger. He was on his feet, but only just. He swayed, his body a tapestry of cuts and bruises, his breath coming in ragged, painful gasps. His eyes, no longer burning with combat fury, were filled with a profound and desolate grief. Slowly, with an effort that seemed to cost him everything, he let his blood-slicked claws fall from his hands. They clattered against the stone, the sound echoing the finality of it all. He looked at the still form of the lion on the ground and whispered, his voice a broken rasp, "We were brothers once." As Rihan stared down at the fallen king, the veil of war and generational hatred began to fray. Smoke of battle cleared, not just from the air, but from his mind. Memories, locked away for what felt like a lifetime, flooded back with the force of a tidal wave. He saw not a rival, not an enemy, but a face he knew as well as his own. He saw two boys, one with a wild golden mane, the other with markings already defining his skin, training side by side in a sun-dappled courtyard. Their laughter echoed in his memory, a sound he hadn't realized he'd missed so dearly. They were taught by the same master, a wise old bear who had seen the futility in their family's war. He had trained them not as lion and tiger, but as men, brothers in arms, in skill, in spirit. But destiny, or perhaps the curse of their bloodlines, had a different path for them. The old king died, the crown became a prize, and the fragile peace shattered. The boys were forced to choose sides, their shared past erased by the demands of the present. They were shaped into weapons, their friendship carved away to make room for duty and hate. They were cursed to fight for a crown that neither of them had ever truly wanted. A symbol that had brought their people nothing but ruin. Slowly, painfully, Rihan knelt beside Oryx's body. The lion's eyes were open, staring blankly at the dark canopy above. The fire within them was gone, leaving only cooling glass. Rihan reached out a trembling hand, not to strike, but to gently close his friend's eyes. Tears mingled with the blood and grime on his face, tracing clean paths through the mask of war. He leaned close, whispering through a throat thick with unshed sobs. His words meant only for the man who was once his brother. "The beasts won," he choked out, his voice raw with the agony of revelation. He looked at his own blood-stained hands, then at the magnificent, broken form of the lion. But the men died long ago. In the desolate silence of the valley, the victor sat beside the vanquished, a king of nothing, mourning the loss of not just his rival, but of himself. The war was over, and everyone had lost.